Original audio drama from the Questers Theatre.
Radio Refuge by David Erdos, Part 4.
Do you really not remember him, Richard? We've kept in touch through the years. He's a brilliant man. He talks about frequencies in his books, which makes this thing so important. Hello, darling.
Hello. I suppose I should say happy birthday, or at least for tomorrow.
How are you, though?
I'm alive. Are you at the house?
Yes, I'm here.
And you have the set there before you? Peter let you in?
Yes, he did. I've asked Jim to come and fetch it tomorrow. Then he'll bring it straight to John's flat.
Is it how you remember?
It is. I'd forgotten its size.
The lawnmower.
But it is so good to see it. Looks like a proper piece of the past.
The past's here.
Richard, I wish I could see you.
No, this is all about the old channels. That's the point, Joe, the issue, that we are, or so I would hope, honouring. Besides, I want you to remember me as I was, and not as the wrinkled prune I've turned into. Or if not prune, then walnut. Age does that to you. You acquire a crust, a frail shell, and huge ears, of course. Whereas sometimes in spades, women mottle, and perhaps coarsen slightly. But for men...
It's all Dumbo.
Oh, was that the elephant's name?
Yes, it was.
Of course, it's also beautiful too, watching the body fade, fold, diminish, and to see in a well-worn face that first feature from which enchantment and love were first found. A gift for life and for death, and a sacrifice the skin offers. A woman or man in their 80s with more or less the same eyes they had as a child, the same nose.
And yet for men, larger ears, which are surely all the better to hear me.
Oh yes, I can hear you. And imagine you too.
Richard,
It's all right, I know.
I love you.
Well, we certainly had our time, didn't we? But of course, the cost of that was your brother.
But you had to detach to protect him, and protect Dad too.
Your dad knew.
Yes.
He would have known anyway, even if I hadn't asked his permission. After all, that whole situation, when I look at it now...
He loved you.
You might say that I gave him the country, perhaps, or at very least introduced him. And then he and your mother, well, it was never right, really, was it?
No.
People fill in, I find. Well, they try to consider their options. Perhaps it explained my work, all those feelings, not knowing where to turn, seeking home. Which is what dear Ben did when he first came to England. And then, of course, Emma, seeking something new, finding him. The quantum world, as you know, is based, if nothing else, on decisions. It isn't so strange a theory. It's about possible worlds, other paths. There are always other things we can do and want as well. That's desire, and also dreaming.
So what did our mother do? Dream of you?
I was an impressive man then, and older, of course, than your father. A cut above, they once called me, but even that phrase or wording seems to imply other wounds. I was looking for a world or an idea where those wounds would ultimately become insubstantial. What will survive of us is love, Larkin says it. Love is an Arundel tomb the past fills.
Our mother died hating me.
Yes, but that was because you replaced her. When women reach the end of their beauty, that can, of course, terrify. We don't like to believe that, of course, but I'm certain that you terrified her, and I didn't help. I know what I did, what I am. I have the same detachment as those who disappoint and then leave us. My need was to study how both the heart hurts and then heals, or rather doesn't. I'm old. I would die with that knowledge. I have been loved, and I use that, just as we use everyone. We all of us live on a pitch of pure expectation. We each take a journey from what we dream about and then get. Love is air, like the storm that is suddenly full of electrons. Love is the static. Love is that charge caught between. Both your mother and you were part of what I shared with your father. It was our love and connection that allowed for you and me and her.
It's why he gave it to you. It's why the radio was yours to look after.
Turn it on. They'll be in there. Because, as with Jesus, both of us want them to be. Faith works the same way, along with the more designed of religions. And of course, Christmas sells it. Gives us both the mark and the brand. There's something else there as well. And this is what the quantum world offers. There are indeed further stations separate to the ones we know we should reach.
Yes, of course.
Joanna, do you remember those nights early on when I would play music to you? Whatever it was. Mozart, Schubert, Bartok or Bach, Philip Glass.
You made me tapes.
John Coltrane, Sidney Bechet, Ornette Coleman.
Yes, you'd record all those records.
Well, yes, as people did then. An exchange. There was one night home from Hull when I'd recorded a quiet piano piece for you. As it trailed away, we were laughing about something we'd done or you'd said. Do you remember that tape? Because it caught our laughter on it. I have it here.
I remember, because your record player was practically next to the bed.
It was.
1991. Oh, I was 21.
Now you've shamed me.
There's no shame.
Then you've aged me.
God, I miss those days.
Now they're ether.
Static too.
Time to try it. We'll be in there still.
Yes, we will.
The following Christmas.
It is amazing you came.
I had no choice. I am, after all, their godfather. It's been long overdue, I assure you. And also, of course, as you know. But I won't come again. There's no need. I'll stay here now, to stay with them, to be close to them both, as I owe them and because it remains the right thing to do. Where did you actually find them?
On the bed. Or rather, Jo was in bed and John lay on top, but beside her.
He must have tried for an hour, but they didn't come round. They just slept.
Like a kind of trance.
Possibly. Yeah, or perhaps an act of deep meditation, willing themselves to withdrawal or to some sort of retreat.
Do you really think that's possible?
Well, why not? This is the Eastern way, or the Buddhist. Despite all our tech, people today think in mono, by which I mean their own world needs or context, whereas, of course, everything else stereos. Stars, of course, don't just shine, they push and control and pull also. They fold. The sky's order is rarely ever the same as the streets. I considered these things in my work, which I don't know if you know, is or was a branch of what is now called theoretical physics. The multiverse, etc. Quantum mechanics.
Far out.
Ella.
Well, that isn't a trite thing to say, as it pretty much caps it. The extreme exploration of things equally so.
Sounds bizarre.
It's philosophy, too. And perhaps there's a little poetry in there. there is an idea of dreams as a window and also life's frequency.
Frequency.
3 teas.
Thank you.
Well, we tend to think of life taking place on one pitch or as part of one stream or current, with everything nice and smooth and free-flowing and carrying us all on our way. But then, of course, water rarely flows. It reacts, adapting to the confines around it, be it the banks of a river, a reservoir, or a cup. Well, reality is the same. It chases shape, curls and changes. And of course there is a static charge placed within it. Things collide or corrupt. Nothing happens or everything at once flakes or breaks. Life is chaos. It splits. So what if we were literally moving and tuned between stations? Our dreams at night are the broadcast, strange extensions of self somewhere else. A radio is a box that tames air and which draws voices from it. A radio, an old one, is a portal or port between dreams. Benjamin's radio was all he had left from his father. He was taken, if not by Nazis, then by the Hungarian collaborators in the war. Ben was just 4 years old. That's a kind of absence on absence. We both used to sit there and listen when we knew each other first years ago. I was a fair bit older than him, so the radio and I taught him English. He used to talk of his father, and I remember us joking that this particular box kept him in. Not in the literal sense, after all. No radio is a coffin. But as the feelings and loss were so potent, this old receiver was on a completely fresh frequency. Look at the Holocaust now. It's another piece of history for most people, but to those who lived through and survived it, it was sharp static and interference as horror, with air turned to acid in an unbearably new form of real. What is real? Do we know? The Chinese believe that for 100 days the dead linger before they continue their journey, and the Buddhists believe reincarnation equally forms the next step. We always talk about light, but sound and pitch remain crucial. What if this was indeed a receiver between the world that we live in and the one in which God, or whatever it is, hears the call? This is not the science, of course, just my somewhat fanciful notion. But in terms of belief and religion, once we choose to believe them, then those codes and decisions are the means by which we all make the world.
So we're all radios?
Yes, broadcasting out to each other. Is that not what love is, or friendship, or attraction, of course?
Also grief.
Yes, the need to breach that long absence. Radio as a refuge, the ultimate Christmas gift. And of course, birthday gift too, what with the twins' closeness to Christmas.
Yes, nearly Jesus.
The abandoned son.
Like his dad.
Two years later.
Thanks for coming. 1 gin.
Well, I hope you made sure it's a big one.
I suppose it's the first time for everything.
You look, trimmer.
Yes. I gave up the van. Now I walk.
To the hospital.
Yeah.
Talk about a change of direction.
One does what one can.
How does one really?
Yes. When one, you know, here's the light.
Two years.
Exactly. Or rather, it will be 2 on Wednesday.
When did Greene die?
Last year.
Oh.
Now, he was a brilliant person. Amazing man. 87. But with a brain like a bomb.
Bombs explode.
I'm talking more about power, the charge, that you need to have to use all of that information. I wish I hadn't spent my youth shagging and picked up a book now and then. That's why I married Joanna, I think. She was a cut above and I knew it. I thought that would help me.
But then you met me. I'm no book.
Or not an open one.
No.
Do we ever know what we want? Richard said it. In fact, it's not even about the things we want. It's the searching that makes us what we are or could be. That's why I'm doing this now.
What, running a hospital radio station?
I'm not running it. I work for it. Well, I suppose I'm nearly running it.
Giving back?
Nothing wrong with that, Ella.
No. I like the touch of white. Is that recent?
We get older. It happens. You still look as you were. How are you?
Me? Oh, I'm always on to the next. But then maybe you might expect that.
Ella, everyone's restless. As long as no one gets hurt. That's the aim.
People were, though.
They were. Perhaps some people just don't understand us, or we them. But the contact, the static between leaves its mark. Now I go and see them each week. Richard bequeathed them his money. It's paid for the care, which was lovely. And then I helped him, of course, lease the flat. They're a work in progress, he said, unlike himself. He'd completed. The radio's return made that happen.
What, is it still in the flat?
It stays on. I check in every few days. It's like watering plants and record things. Sometimes I stay and listen. It's like whale song to me.
God forbid.
You know, the home isn't far. You could always, if you liked, come and see them.
Radio Gaga.
Radio Refuge, Ella.
You are joking.
You don't need to be like this, you know. You don't do yourself any favours.
I didn't love him. Look, I know that sounds harsh, but I didn't. And now St. Jim's Safeway seems to be all about honesty. Suddenly you seem whiter than white, and have even got the grey streak to prove it. Oh, I should have left sooner. That's what I did wrong. I stayed on.
Didn't do him any favours.
I know. But then they took off as well.
Yes, they did.
Twins on mad channels.
Well, at least they shared something.
Yeah, I know, Jim. Oh, God, don't say it. They shared a different frequency, blah, blah, blah.
When did you get so cold?
Ask my mum. Whereas now you're lukewarm. You used to have some real coal about you. Look, listen, Christmas is cold. We are all colder.
What, and so we have to be that too? Is that right? John and Joe have proved that isn't true. I think what they've done is astounding. They were so in tune that their music is something that people like you and me just can't hear. To miss their parents and now Richard, the man that linked them to a pitch that's beyond us. That act, that kind of retreat or withdrawal, to me it says something. It's like a form of...
What?
Sacrifice. A gift for the dead that can only be made by the living. An exchange.
Jim.
A tuning from one reality to the next. I think that's
What?
beautiful.
God. I finished my gin. That's depressing.
Would you like another?
Do you know, one isn't sure if one does, actually.
Are they asleep?
Well, we think so. Although you can never be sure, not completely.
They look at peace.
Well, they're comfy. That's often the most effective thing we can do. I'm sure your visits help.
Thanks.
I'm making tea. Would you like some?
Please. Nurse
I'm Kathy.
Kathy, of course. Lovely name.
It's a perfectly ordinary name, and I know you know that, but... Well, I'll still be back in a minute.
Christmas has come at last.
Aren't you lucky?
Can I put the radio on?
Oh, now let me think.
Ta.
All right, yes. But you'll have to be good.
I might try that. After all, there's always a first time.
And then a second time. If you're good.
Mum? John?
Dad?
Jesus.
Jim?
In part 4 of Radio Refuge, Jim was played by Roger Beaumont. Ella was played by Samantha Boffin. Richard Greene was played by John Turner. The nurse was played by Samantha Boffin. The waitress was played by Carol Fullilove. John was played by Julian Smith. Joe was played by Carol Fullilove. The audio engineers were Laurie Swan and James Connor. The audio designer was Dennis Dracup. The original music was by James Connor, Michelle Burton, and Dennis Dracup. Radio Refuge was written and directed by David Erdos and was an original audio drama for the Questors Theatre.